Yes, right over with the right back with one.
We would like to introduce recording in progress. I'd like to introduce our speaker. I have known her. I don't even know when I met her. I can't say. It's been 3 or 4 years. We met at a party. I didn't know she was in recovery and vice versa. And somehow we connected with each other and figured it out. She is a deep well of compassion. And I've learned a lot from her as we work our steps, as we live life. And I'm just really proud to introduce my friend, Laura. I have to have glasses. Okay. Good morning. I'm Laura. I'm an alcoholic. Trying to just calm down here and be centered. Congratulations to all the birthdays. That is like, just my heart, 11 months, 18 months, 31 years, a year. Amazing. And that's what this is all about. One day at a time. So I had this morning, I'm just going to open with a reading in a daily reflection book that I use for October 20th. You don't get to choose. Did I say I'm Laura? I'm an alcoholic. Oh, you could tell I'm a little nervous. I'm like, oh God. Okay. You don't get to choose how you're going to die or when. You can only decide how you're going to live now. That's by Joan Baez. How thrilling to contemplate that we can choose every attitude we have and every action we take. We have been gifted with full responsibility for our development. What will we try today? It's our personal choice. How will we decide on a particular issue? Our options are only limited by our vision. Every situation in life offers us a significant opportunity for making a decision that will, of necessity, influence the remaining situations we encounter. Just as we are interdependent, needing and influencing one another in all instances that bring us together, likewise, our decisions are never inviolate. Each is singly important. However, its impact is multiplied by the variety of other decisions triggered. This choice is ours for living fully today, for taking advantage of all the opportunities that present themselves. Our personal growth, our emotional and spiritual development are in our hands. God will provide us with the guidance, and the program offers us the tools. The decision to act is ours alone. And the reflection is, I will exercise my personal power, my choices, and determine my development. I was surprised this morning and just, knew it was God's guidance that I got to have that reading. I mean, just so beautiful because it really connects to my story, like what this has meant for me. And I'm going to do kind of a weird thing that I really wanted to prepare. I've been hearing stories for the last few years. My sobriety date is June 3rd, 2014. So it's been a big year. It's 10 years. And I'm, I got to like reflect on these 10 years versus other 10-year, times. And so I did this kind of weird thing. I'm going to kind of zip through it. I broke my life into, I'm 60 years old. So like, that's kind of wild too. I got sober when I was 50 and here I am 60. So I'm just going to give you like an overview of where I grew up. And, it's always like, what happened to you? How did you become alcoholic? When did you decide to choose to get sober, if you chose to get sober, and what brought you to it? So I was born in Duluth, Minnesota. I am the only girl in my family, three older brothers. My mom was a librarian. My dad was an English teacher in high school, and he was an alcoholic. I come from a deep, deep generational alcoholism. His parents were alcoholics. His grandparents were alcoholics. There is just such a huge, just prolific alcoholism. It's interesting. My mother's family, not alcoholics. They could absolutely drink with immunity. I always, as a little girl, would look at my mom's parents, and they'd always have like a little brandy on Christmas, and everything was so pretty in their house, and it just was so easy. And I really wanted to be that way, but I did not end up with that. I was, from 6 to 12, I was like sweet girl. I loved school. I just was, that good little girl in school. But from ages 7 to 9, I have an older brother, my oldest brother. He began sexually abusing me, and this is a very significant part, I believe, to what ended up being why I chose alcohol, and how alcohol worked for me. So I've remembered everything about that abuse. And I'd go to church and I'd pray about it. And I did all these things like to be so good and perfect. I was an altar girl, which is very unique. I got to say, even Easter Mass. And as my life, because I was so good and perceived this way, I was the cheerleader. I was always driven to be this happy person that would just, that's the track I took. People take different tracks. When I was 9, I did tell my brother to stop. And for some whatever reason, he did stop. So I had this huge transition when I went to junior high. From junior high until college, I was just into this perfectionism and this happy girl and being the cheerleader and the, good one. And when I turned 19, I took my first drink at the state basketball tournament down in the Twin Cities. And I just remember this so deeply. I was with my best friends. It was a beer. And when I drank that beer, it was like my body, like some funny movie, my body just went boom, 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 back into a corner. I was like, oh my God, this stuff is amazing. This is like, I just get to be, instead of having to work so hard to be good and free and all this, I was like, it was that elixir for me. So I like that. I didn't, of course, then too, I was like in this panic about, oh no, now I've taken this drink, I'm going to become an alcoholic like my dad. So my drinking was so different than my dad's. And my whole alcoholism has been completely different than how my dad drank. I quickly drank to blackout when I got to college. I mean, I already was blacking out as a freshman in college. But my whole everybody around me is drinking and having fun. And, you're in college. It's what we're all supposed to do. So I, one of the biggest things that started to happen at that same time is I started not feeling okay. I was always stressed out about this perfect life I was having or trying to be. And it was not, I was really, really depressed and trying to be perfect. It might have been anxiety. I don't know. But I finally went to this therapist. I think this is ironic. I went to a therapist at my college, and I told her, do you think I'm having all of this stress and anxiety because my brother abused me for these years? And I always think, wow, this therapist, they must have wondered, well, yeah, that's probably probably a significant aspect. And I am so grateful that I have had what I haven't threaded through here. I've always had this spiritual connection. I've always asked God for help, and I'm sure I've gotten this help, but I did this perfection girl thing. So it's been an interesting ride that way, and really hasn't changed. So I graduate from college. Every year during college, I worked at a ranch in Colorado, and I got into some seriously good drinking there. I mean, it was super fun, and it was tons of blackouts, but I'm going to be okay. So when I graduated from college in Minnesota, I moved to Colorado, and started my work life there. From like 24 to 28. Um, well, I had a horrible tragedy happen in when I turned 23 and started my new career and everything. I started dating this guy. Um, and I dated him for 6 months, and it was like, well, on Christmas Eve, I went back to Minnesota, and I got a call on Christmas Day, and I was very depressed and having a hard morning on Christmas Day. And I had a call that he had died. He fell from a building. And he was a big drinker. I don't know if, his judgment was off and he went back to his home, but here's this other, humongously foundational thing that happens in my life. And what do I do with that? One of the things I did with that is I drank like crazy with his mother. I was living in Boulder. I would drive drunk all the time. And, but I also went towards God and went towards, I was trying to figure out maybe if I go really deep Christian, or maybe if I do this, like I was really trying to reach out to the whole spiritual part of this and see how that was going to help me. And yeah, so then um, I met another man a couple of years, well, maybe like a year later. And he was divorced and had kids, and we had a great relationship for a long time. He was an alcoholic. I completely drank with him all the time, and every event, it was going to football games and all this stuff. And one of the things that has always been part of my alcohol story, especially in these years, it's the elixir. And sex, and not good chosen sex or with the right partners or whatever, it was a problem for me. When I get drunk, I would end up in precarious situations. And I had so much shame about it. And I've resolved a lot of that shame, and I've had amazing healing and forgiveness about that. And it completely makes sense to me that that is one of the things that happened because of, the trauma of being sexually abused. It opened up a gateway for that to be part of my story. So I ended up moving back to Minnesota, thank goodness. I had been doing a ton of therapy by now, and I really knew that I wanted to confront my family, tell my story, and be able to share that. And so it's really amazing. At that same time as I was about prepared to tell my family about being abused by my brother, I met my husband. It's just so great how God provides us with people or experiences. And I had done enough healing to recognize that Steve was really safe. And he immediately, I mean, from the minute we met, he dug down deep and he listened to me and he heard me and he really wanted to know me. And that was a really, that's such a part of this disease from my perspective is how lonely alcoholism is and how we're all trying to be seen. And it's also like so amazingly brave and wonderful that I was ready to tell my family. We set up a situation. I had a therapist. Steve was living in Denver and he flew to Minneapolis at the time when the weekend that I was going to tell my whole family about the abuse. And it was my mom and dad and my three brothers and myself in a room. And we shared that. And, you know, my brothers were married and their spouses were outside the room and including Steve. And we hadn't even committed to get married or anything like that. I mean, it was just like to have this person, you know, that cared so much and wanted to support me through that was amazing. And so it was amazing. I will tell you that that was what age like 29, 29, 30. I drank until I was, well, no. Then a really horrible thing happened about a couple in 1999. I started living my life again now and much more free and all this stuff. And then I went to Chicago for business and I went out for drinks with my husband's best friend and I blacked out and we ended up in bed together. And I was, you know, completely humiliated, devastated. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to go home. And I basically lied. I'm like, I mean, part of me lied. I said, you know, Steve, I'm an alcoholic. I can't, I like, of course, I didn't tell the other part of the story, but I'm an alcoholic. So I ended up in treatment and I got to go to a really amazing place down in Arizona, Wickenburg, Arizona. And they did a really, really, really deep dive into the sexual abuse part of my. It was a 12-step program. It was all AA. I went to tons of AA meetings. I accepted that I was an alcoholic, but you know, I'm really here for sexual abuse. It's an important part of my story. So I get out of the out of treatment, and we went on a river trip down which river, Steve? The Missouri River. We canoed down the Missouri River, following Lewis and Clark for 3 days, and incredible. And in the meantime, Steve had come to the treatment center and we did a family week there. And my parents came and all of that. And Steve found out the truth. And, you know, it's been a work in progress. We've done a lot of therapy together. And I'm grateful for his amazing forgiveness and constant support. So from that date, I stay sober for 5 years. I make a deal with Steve. You know, I'm going to be sober for 5 years. During those 5 years, I have kids. We have children. And pretty much on the anniversary, on New Year's Eve, 5 years later, we decide that I'm going to drink, you know, and we had champagne. I remember that night having champagne and I'm thinking, I can do this. I've done so much, you know, I'm healthy. I tried AA when I got out of treatment. I did not connect. So I will just say that there were financial changes. There were a lot of things during that time of being sober. And then from age 42 to 49, that's when I started, you know, drinking, and it all went downhill again. did it go downhill like dramatically? It was like this for me. During that time, Steve moved here to Missoula. His work took him here, and I'm back in Denver, getting the girls out of high school, working my job, and that when Steve got pushed to move up here, I had gone out. My last drunk was going out to my girls' night out party. Again, this whole theme of pretty drinking, it's like my party, gotta look good and black out. So, right. So the last drunk I had was at this woman Brandis's house, and everybody's having their pretty drinks, and I black out, and I didn't wake up. I come to in her bed, or in a bed in her house that they poured me into, I guess. And then I was like, oh, holy shit, kids have to go to school today. So I rode my bicycle there so I wouldn't get DUI. And so I get out, jump on my bicycle, fall over. And I still have like a cute dress on. I'm like, right? Oh my God. I'm like, okay, this is it. What am I going to do? Husband's moving to Montana. I'm sitting here having to go, be the caretaker for my children, go to work, keep a job. And I was demoralized. It was the demoralization step for me. And I just said, okay, I got to go to an AA meeting. And I walked into, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but there's this incredibly cool clubhouse in Denver. It's York Street. It's this big mansion, and there's 24/7 meetings there all the time. If you're ever in Denver, you got to go because you'll find a meeting. And I walked in, and of course, I'm early, like 45 minutes early for the meeting. So I left, but I don't even remember what I did, but I came back and I sat on one of those metal chairs and I raised my hand. I said I was an alcoholic. And now the part I just really need to read this page 25 in the big book, because it is the truth for me. And I'm so grateful that this book was here for me. And, there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confessions of shortcomings, which the process requires for successful communciation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life we had been living it. When, therefore, we approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not ever dreamed. The great fact is just this, and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. God has commenced to accomplish those things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. Oh, did not really work. Wow. This program has changed my life. And luckily, I have been one of those who, once I finally got to that place, I've said, I'm here. I'm going to stay. I'm going to keep my ears open. I'm going to see all the common things that we have in each other. And hear those things that I have to do. I've always had a sponsor. I have always gone to meetings. I did a massive amount of international travel when I first got sober. Within 2 weeks after I got sober, I had to go to Europe and I found meetings and it was incredible, especially because the previous year I had been the person that bought all the drinks for all of my clients. And then what do? You go back that next year and then you're not buying drinks. That's weird. But I didn't, I had this program telling me I could not do that. And I just, when you're struggling, just follow the rules. I mean, that whole struggle, that whole part of, our brains that wants us to think we're unique or different or any of those things. It's like I just look for people that are similar so that I can stay here and be sober and enjoy, a good life. Um, it's, you know, I ended up moving up here to Missoula 2 years ago. And that was another pretty big challenging decision because I'd lived in Colorado for 28 years. All my friends, everything was there. And but my husband was here and I also do Al-Anon. I've had to do Al-Anon. I grew up, all of my brothers are alcoholics. One is sober, one died. One is sober without AA. So, when I moved here, I just thought, well, my Al-Anon sponsor said to me, as I was trying to figure out what to do, I'm an empty nester. She goes, "So, Laura, what are you thinking you want to do with that marriage of yours?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, it's probably time for me to think about that." And it wasn't too hard. Uh, like every marriage, we've had our ups and downs. And I made the decision to come up here and be with Steve and work on this relationship. I mean, pretty sweet time when you're an empty nester, but it's also a challenging time because what's your purpose? And then I leave all my friends and my AA. But every time I came to visit, I came to meetings, and my home group is the Early Sunrise group. And I go 5 days a week. It's just my thing. It's easy for me. And it's just my way. I don't, we share these stories so that you can pick up something that maybe I'm doing that would work for you. I don't, I love the whole part of AA that is it is true freedom. We all get to craft it in a way that can work for us. And if you're struggling with any aspect of it, just keep coming back. I'll never forget when my friend Noelle told me when I was going through a hard time in Denver, like 6 years in or something. She goes, "How many meetings are you going to?" And I'm like 5. She goes, "That's not enough." Right. And I'm like, okay. And I went to more meetings. I mean, it's just, I know I've taken this happy, I'm very lucky that I have had this spirit of belief and happiness. I know this is a gift from spirit to me. And I have taken it into AA as much as I possibly can. And then for me, so I move here, start going to the Early Sunrise, I go to some women's meetings. I meet Katie not through the program. Then I discover that she's in AA. Are you kidding me? And she is my sister. Like, how lucky am I to find after, having mature female relationships in Colorado to come here and be able to network and have these relationships here. It's what makes life so good. And then my husband, who has been complete support. I mean, look at him. He dressed up for this. Like, that's like, so he's always taken it seriously and really believed in me. And my husband drinks. And like yesterday, we did a whole croquet tournament, with people drinking around me all the time. And I am lucky that I get to share ahead of time or whatever, I'm worried about this or what have you. gosh, I did not share one part of my story. I must. A year ago, Steve and I moved back to Denver for 4 months to care for our son-in-law who had terminal cancer. And the hardest part of this terminal cancer, the easy part for me was having an open heart for this man. The hardest part was seeing my daughter use alcohol through the whole thing. And I got triggered all the time because it was like I was a little girl seeing alcohol in places and finding hidden alcohol and all this stuff. It was really hard. And 3 months ago, after Lawrence had some healing time, I couldn't stand by lying anymore. And so I did, in a very gentle, safe place, confront her. And she has not spoken to me since, or my husband. And, these are what this damn disease does to all of us. And, I pray and I hope and all that, but we'll see what happens. It's not, God's got her, I don't. And I'll be there in a second for whatever she needs. My husband will be there for her. We want her to be sober. But I think it's pretty amazing. There is a solution. Look at all that hope. And I always get to turn back to this in every hard time that I have. And I get to be in a room with all of you guys and look in everybody's eyes and, just feel the love that you're sharing with me and push it back to you. And I have one final thing. I do a gratitude list every day that I send out to probably 30 women. And 3 newcomers on that list wrote me hard things today. And, I get to be hope for them today, and other days they get to be hope for me. So I'm Laura. I'm an alcoholic and glad to be here.